Zaxlery nervously fidgeted with her translucent appendages as she stood before the imposing gates of the Galactic Academy of Advanced Sciences. The prestigious institution loomed before her, a sprawling complex of crystalline spires and pulsating energy fields that seemed to defy the very laws of physics. As a Kulathian, Zaxlery had always dreamed of studying among the brightest minds in the known universe. But now, faced with the reality of her situation, doubt began to creep into her thoughts. "You've got this," she whispered to herself, her bioluminescent skin flickering with a mix of excitement and anxiety. With a deep breath that expanded her respiratory sacs, Zaxlery stepped through the shimmering force field that served as the Academy's entrance. The atrium was a cacophony of sights, sounds, and scents from across the galaxy. Students of all shapes, sizes, and species milled about, their voices a symphony of clicks, whistles, and modulated tones. Zaxlery's sensory tendrils quivered as she tried to take it all in. A holographic guide materialized before her. "Welcome, new student," it chirped in the universal trade language. "Please proceed to the orientation chamber for species classification and course assignment." Zaxlery followed the pulsing light path on the floor, her four legs moving in perfect synchronization. As she entered the orientation chamber, her gaze was immediately drawn to a group of students huddled in the corner, their voices hushed but clearly agitated. "Did you hear?" One of them, a gelatinous Blorbian, burbled. "They've accepted a Deathworlder this year." Zaxlery's central nerve cluster tightened. Deathworlders were the stuff of legends and nightmares, beings from planets with such harsh conditions that they had evolved into hardy, often terrifying creatures. The mere thought of studying alongside one sent a shiver through her exoskeleton. Before she could ponder further, a booming voice filled the chamber. "Attention, new students. Welcome to the Galactic Academy of Advanced Sciences. I am Archproctor Zyxon. Your educational journey begins now." The holographic image of Archproctor Zyxon, a towering, multi-limbed being with eyes that seemed to glow with ancient wisdom, appeared before them. "You have been chosen from countless applicants across the galaxy. Here, you will push the boundaries of science, challenge your preconceptions, and forge the future of our cosmic civilization." Zaxlery felt a swell of pride. She had earned her place here, and no amount of trepidation about Deathworlders would hold her back. "Your first-class assignments have been transmitted to your neural interfaces," Zyxon continued. "Remember, cooperation and understanding between species is paramount. May the cosmic currents guide your studies." As the hologram faded, Zaxlery accessed her neural interface, her antennae twitching as she processed the information. Her first class was theoretical xenobiology, adaptations in extreme environments. A fitting start, given the whispers about a Deathworlder in their midst. With a mixture of excitement and apprehension, Zaxlery made her way to the lecture hall. As she entered, her sensory tendrils picked up an unusual scent, something earthy and metallic that she had never encountered before. Her gaze swept the room, taking in the diverse array of students until it landed on a figure sitting alone in the back corner. The being was unlike anything Zaxlery had ever seen. It had a rigid, symmetrical form with only 2 arms and 2 legs. Its skin seemed to be made of some sort of non-bioluminescent material, and atop its head was a mass of fibrous strands. But what struck Zaxlery most were its eyes, 2 forward-facing orbs that seemed to take in everything with an unnerving intensity. This, she realized with a jolt of fear and fascination, must be the Deathworlder. As if sensing her gaze, the creature turned and looked directly at Zaxlery. To her surprise, it curved its facial features in what she would later learn was called a smile. The gesture was somehow both terrifying and disarming. Zaxlery quickly found a seat, her mind racing. She had come to the academy to expand her understanding of the universe, and now the universe had placed one of its most enigmatic creations right in her class. Little did she know that this encounter was just the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything she thought she knew about life, death, and the nature of strength itself. Weeks passed, and Zaxlery found herself settling into the rhythm of academy life. The classes were challenging, pushing the boundaries of her considerable intellect, but she thrived on the mental stimulation. However, one constant source of unease remained. The Deathworlder. She had learned that his name was Alex Chen, and he was from a planet called Earth. Despite her initial fear, Zaxaleri couldn't help but be intrigued by Alex. He was quiet in class, but when he did speak, his insights were often startlingly profound. It was as if his Deathworld origins gave him a unique perspective on the universe. One day, as Zaxaleri entered the theoretical xenobiology lecture hall, she noticed an unusual tension in the air. Professor Kulvax, a being composed entirely of swirling gases contained within a force field, seemed more agitated than usual, his particles swirling at an increased rate. "Students," Kulvax began, his voice a modulated hiss, "today marks the beginning of your practical assignment phase. You will be tasked with handling one of the most dangerous substances known to the galactic community, Novanian fire crystals." A collective gasp rippled through the classroom. Zaxaleri's tendrils curled in shock. Novanian fire crystals were notoriously unstable, capable of unleashing devastating amounts of energy with the slightest mishandling. "Your task," Kulvax continued, "is to analyze the crystal's molecular structure and propose a method for stabilizing it. This assignment will test not only your scientific acumen, but also your ability to work under extreme pressure." Zaxaleri's mind raced. How could they be expected to handle such a volatile substance? She glanced around the room, noting the looks of fear and uncertainty on her classmates' faces. Even the usually stoic Voltarians, with their silicon-based bodies, seemed to be vibrating with anxiety. Then her gaze fell on Alex. To her astonishment, the Deathworlder appeared completely unfazed. In fact, was that a hint of excitement in his alien eyes? Professor Kulvax's voice cut through her thoughts. "You will work in pairs for this assignment. Safety protocols are paramount. The slightest mistake could have catastrophic consequences." The professor began listing off the pairs, and Zaxaleri felt her respiratory sacs constrict as she heard her name called: Zaxaleri and Alex Chen. She turned to look at her new partner, a mix of terror and curiosity flooding her system. Alex met her gaze and gave her that unsettling smile again. "Looks like we're in this together," he said, his voice surprisingly soft for a being from such a harsh world. As they made their way to the laboratory, Zaxaleri couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking into something far more significant than a mere class assignment. The way Alex moved, with a fluid grace that belied his rigid form, both fascinated and unnerved her. The laboratory was a sterile environment, filled with equipment that hummed with barely contained energy. At the center of each workstation sat a containment field, within which hovered a small, innocuous-looking crystal. Its surface shimmered with an inner fire that seemed to whisper promises of both creation and destruction. "Now," Professor Kulvax announced, "you may begin your analysis. Remember the slightest—" Before he could finish his warning, a cry of alarm rang out. One of the Voltarian students had accidentally brushed against the containment field, causing it to fluctuate. The fire crystal within began to pulse ominously, its glow intensifying by the second. Panic erupted in the lab. Students scrambled for the exits, their survival instincts overriding any sense of scientific curiosity. Professor Kulvax's gaseous form swirled in distress as he tried to regain control of the situation. But amidst the chaos, Alex remained calm. Without hesitation, he strode towards the destabilizing crystal, his movements precise and deliberate. "Alex, no!" Zaxaleri cried out, her translator struggling to convey the depth of her terror. But the Deathworlder paid no heed. With a swift motion, he reached through the faltering containment field and grasped the crystal bare-handed. The lab fell silent, every being holding their breath, or equivalent respiratory function, as they waited for the inevitable explosion. It never came. Instead, Alex stood there, holding the Novanian fire crystal as if it were nothing more than a curious paperweight. The crystal's glow dimmed, its volatile energy seemingly calmed by the Deathworlder's touch. "Fascinating," Alex murmured, turning the crystal over in his hands. "The molecular structure responds to bioelectric fields. With the right modulation, we might be able to—" He stopped, suddenly aware of the stunned silence surrounding him. Every eye, ocular sensor and sensory apparatus in the room was fixed on him in disbelief. Zaxaleri felt her world tilt on its axis. Everything she thought she knew about the universe, about the hierarchies of species and the nature of adaptation, seemed to crumble in the face of this impossible display. As Alex carefully placed the now stable crystal back in its containment field, Professor Kulvax's particles swirled in what could only be described as academic ecstasy. "Extraordinary," the professor exclaimed. "In all my cycles of teaching, I've never—" "Mr. Chen, you must allow us to study your physiological responses immediately." But Zaxaleri wasn't listening to the professor's excited babbling. Her focus remained on Alex, who now stood awkwardly at the center of attention, looking almost embarrassed by his feat. In that moment, Zaxaleri realized that her journey at the Galactic Academy was going to be far more transformative than she had ever imagined. The universe, it seemed, still had many secrets to reveal, and this Deathworlder might just be the key to unlocking them. As the initial shock began to wear off, whispers erupted around the laboratory. Zaxaleri could sense the mix of fear, awe, and burning curiosity emanating from her fellow students. She found herself drawn towards Alex, her scientific mind already formulating 1,000 questions. How did you do that?" she managed to ask, her translator struggling to convey the complexity of emotions in her voice. Alex shrugged, a gesture Zaxaleri was beginning to recognize as a sign of human nonchalance. "On Earth we have similar substances, radioactive materials, volatile compounds. You learn to respect them, not fear them." The casual way he spoke of such dangerous elements sent a shiver through Zaxaleri's exoskeleton. What kind of world could produce beings who viewed such hazards as mundane? Professor Kovacs's excited voice cut through the murmurs. "Class, it seems we have stumbled upon an unprecedented learning opportunity. Mr. Chen's unique physiology appears to have properties that can stabilize the Novanian fire crystals. We must adjust our assignment accordingly." The professor's particles swirled faster as he continued. "Your new task will be to work with Mr. Chen to analyze both the crystal's structure and his physiological responses. Perhaps together we can unlock the secret to handling these volatile elements safely." A ripple of nervous excitement passed through the students. The chance to study both an exotic substance and a Deathworlder up close was both thrilling and terrifying. As the class reorganized itself, Zaxaleri found herself at the center of a whirlwind of activity. Being Alex's assigned partner, she was now the focus of intense interest from her peers. Some approached her with questions, while others kept a wary distance, as if Alex's Deathworlder nature might somehow be contagious. For his part, Alex seemed uncomfortable with the attention. "I didn't mean to disrupt the class," he said quietly to Zaxaleri. "On my world, you're taught to act quickly in dangerous situations. I just reacted." Zaxaleri's scientific curiosity began to overcome her initial fear. "But weren't you afraid?" she asked, her sensory tendrils quivering with interest. The energy readings from that crystal were off the charts. It should have vaporized your cellular structure on contact. Alex's lips curved in that strange smile again. "Afraid? A little, I suppose. But in that moment, I was more concerned about everyone else in the room. Sometimes you have to push past fear to do what's necessary." His words struck Zaxaleri like a gravitational wave. The concept of suppressing one's survival instinct for the sake of others was not unknown in galactic society, but to see it demonstrated so casually was astounding. As they began to set up their equipment for the new assignment, Zaxaleri found her perception of Alex, and by extension all Deathworlders, shifting dramatically. There was clearly more to these beings than their fearsome reputation suggested. "Alex," she said, her voice filled with newfound determination, "I believe we have an opportunity here to bridge a gap in interspecies understanding. Would you be willing to undergo a full physiological scan? It could provide invaluable data." The Deathworlder nodded, that curious smile playing on his lips again. "I'm an open book, Zaxaleri. Ask me anything you want to know. But fair warning, humans are full of surprises. You might not be prepared for what you find." As Zaxaleri began calibrating the scanner, she felt a thrill of excitement coursing through her system. She had come to the Galactic Academy seeking knowledge, and now she stood on the brink of a discovery that could reshape the galaxy's understanding of life itself. Little did she know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would challenge every preconception she held. push her to her intellectual and emotional limits, and ultimately change the course of galactic history. The days that followed the incident in the laboratory were a whirlwind of activity and revelation. Zaxiliri found herself at the center of the most exciting research project in the Academy's recent history. Working closely with Alex, she began to unravel the mysteries of both the Novanian fire crystals and Deathworlder physiology. Their makeshift research station became a hub of constant activity. Students from various disciplines flocked to observe and assist, their initial fear of Alex giving way to insatiable curiosity. Zaxiliri, with her natural aptitude for xenobiology, took the lead in analyzing the data. "It's extraordinary," she exclaimed one day, her bioluminescent skin pulsing with excitement as she pored over the latest scan results. "Alex, your cellular structure. It's unlike anything we've ever seen. Your cells appear to have an unprecedented level of adaptability." Alex, who had been patiently submitting to scan after scan, raised an eyebrow. "How so?" Zaxiliri's tendrils waved as she tried to articulate the complexity of what she was seeing. "It's as if your cells are in a constant state of anticipation. They're primed to react to a wide range of environmental stressors. When exposed to the energy signature of the fire crystals, they instantly began to produce a counteracting field." "Huh," Alex mused, looking at the holographic display of his own cellular structure. "I guess that explains why I've always been good at adjusting to new environments. Back on Earth, we call it rolling with the punches." The idiom didn't translate well, leaving Zaxiliri's translator buzzing in confusion. But the implications of their findings were clear. Deathworlders, or at least humans, possessed an innate physiological resilience that went far beyond what anyone in the galactic community had imagined.